Jayla, hi. It's been a long time, girl. Thanks for coming on JBK on air this morning. Appreciate it.
Hey, yeah, good to see you, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's been. I was thinking about it today with it being 2022. It's been almost 10 years since we've been at Carmel. That's hard to accept, you know. So
I know it's crazy. Like, when did we get old?
yeah, I call it becoming more vintage. You know, we're glowing up, hopefully, but
Blowing up. I like that.
um, we both grew up in Carmel. Did you grow up in Carmel? I didn't know if you had lived there your whole life or not.
Yeah, no. So my family moved there when I was in about fifth grade.
Okay.
So yeah, halfway basically grew up there. Not from like the very start of my childhood, but yeah, Carmel is home.
Um, what for people that haven't been there, how would you describe that experience growing up?
Growing up in Carmel.
Yeah.
Um, so Carmel's a really, like, honestly, now that like I've grown up some and I've moved away and I go back to visit family. I love Carmel. Carmel is a very urban community. It is a very polished community. I think growing up, I didn't always necessarily like that, just because, you're a Black girl growing up in a predominantly white community. It's obviously different. And at times you kind of do feel like you stick out and you kind of want to be around more people that look like you. And you want to kind of get outside of that bubble. So growing up, I loved growing up in Carmel, but I did try to find other opportunities to connect with people outside of the Carmel community because, like I said, it does kind of feel like a bubble.
Yeah, I mean, when we grew up there, at least during the time that we were at the high school, Barack Obama was just taking over. George Bush was leaving, so the country was kind of changing. And by the time, I voted for Obama in his second term. So it's look back and see how much it's changed in just 10 years is kind of crazy. And you mentioned it being a bubble too. How does CHTV compare to the other stations you've worked at? I mean, it's compared to other ones, it's nice for even a high school.
Oh yeah. Oh, like, and I'm trying to remember correctly, that was so long ago. But we were exposed to a lot of like state-of-the-art facilities, equipment, all of that at CHTV. And then when you kind of enter the real world, I mean, at Ball State, I was fortunate enough to still kind of have access to a lot of that top-notch equipment and all of that. But my first job was in Amarillo, Texas. And I wouldn't say that we did lack resources when it came down to like manpower. But it's just not always as shiny and new as kind of the stuff that we got to use at CHTV or even what I was exposed to at Ball State. So yeah, it's cool that you mentioned that because it is much different when, and it's great that they're exposing us to that and they're giving us the best of the best, but it's not always like that in the real world.
Yeah, and I wore my Stevie Ray Vaughan Texas shirt for you today, being from Texas. Have you done all of your professional experiences out of Texas, right? And one of the reasons you did that, I'm very impressed with this. You're a bilingual, yes? So speak English and Spanish. I'll tell you, in my limited experience of like having to speak Spanish in a situation, when you can't speak to somebody, you feel like you're a toddler. It's one of the worst feelings in the world. And I feel like America's slowly changing where we're all going to have to adapt and know some,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when I graduated, I really wanted to go somewhere where I could use it because in college I studied journalism, TCOM, and Spanish. I actually got to work in Spain for a little bit in college doing an internship there. So I knew that I really didn't want to lose it. I mean, you work so hard and I've been taking Spanish for years, like I'm talking pre-K up. So I really wanted to make sure that I could stay in tune with the language, incorporate it in what I was doing in my job. So I was looking for places where I could go where I'd be able to use it right away. So starting out in television, you obviously have to kind of start from the bottom and work your way up. The industry has changed even now, 4 years later, where you don't necessarily have to start as low. But back then you did have to start really, really low to kind of just get your foot in the door. So in Amarillo, Texas, that was like one of the smallest markets, but it was in Texas and I'd be able to use Spanish. So yeah, that's why I decided to go there, and I wanted to stay in Texas. So I just kind of tried to work my way up from there.
How often would you say that you use Spanish? I feel like I would have to use it all the time just for it to remain fresh, you know?
Like use it as far as keeping my
Yeah.
skills sharp, or use it as far as just every day coming in contact with people.
I mean, for me, like the few semesters I took Spanish, by the time, I was a senior, I didn't really remember a whole ton. If you don't use it on a frequent basis, I feel like you would lose some of it.
Yeah, and that's so true. And so I have to use it frequently. And honestly, when I lived in El Paso, Texas, I was there for 2 years. That was great. It was like literally living the dream. Like, was wholeheartedly a bilingual reporter because everybody in El Paso speaks Spanish. In my newsroom, we spoke Spanish all the time.
Yeah.
And then you were even coming in contact with people frequently because we're right there on the border where you're trying to get interviews and they might not always speak English. So you would have to speak Spanish. So use it all the time in El Paso. I don't use it as much here, but I do try to still be mindful of it. So I still have like a lot of really, really good friends in El Paso. So I'm talking to them all the time, whether it's FaceTime or texting them, and I'll still be kind of using those Spanish skills because I'm going to need them here in a few weeks, because when I'm in Beijing, I'm actually going to be having to produce Spanish content while I'm over there, which is super cool, super excited about. I've never done that, obviously on a deadline, on assignment. So it'll be cool being able to kind of incorporate those skills and see if I still got it.
Well, and while you were at Ball State, I know that you were a gymnast too. Getting to cover the Olympics as a former athlete, still get to be involved a little bit. That's kind of cool, right?
Yes, like I am so excited. And so far I've had to interview like quite a few athletes leading up because we've got like our pre-Olympic coverage. So it's just kind of really cool seeing all of these athletes because I know how hard athletes work to accomplish their dreams. So it's really cool to kind of see all of the work they've gotten to put in, talk to them on a personal level, especially having that athletic background because sports are special. They really are.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember doing many a game with you on the sideline. Carmel football is an experience for anybody that hasn't done that.
I forgot about that. Yes.
You were one of the best. If I had to call somebody right now, I would call you. I swear.
Oh my gosh!
Awesome.
I love that, and I literally forgot all about that until you just brought that up.
Yeah. And I also thought of you. I think it was this summer. Everything has happened so frequently. It's a continuous trauma, being a journalist. But Simone Biles, she dropped out with mental health concerns. How much of that was a factor for you being an athlete? I feel like it would be a lot of pressure, even at a college level, to perform in something like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And maybe I'm biased because I am a gymnast, but I always like to say gymnastics is kind of in a category of its own, just because it really is unlike any other sport. I mean, you have sports that are similar. I would say like ice skating and dance maybe kind of are sort of in the same category, but gymnastics is just very, very intense. And everybody who you see at the high performing level, whether it's collegiate, whether it's the elite Olympic level, they've all been doing this since they were practically in diapers. Like we're talking 3 years old. I started when I was 3 years old. Really, probably between 3 and 5 years old, you've been dedicating your life to this sport. So yeah, it does take a toll. And like I said, especially when you get to that level, there's this pressure to perform. I can't even begin to imagine the pressure Simone was facing just because she is the best of the best and all eyes are on her. And, yeah, you're the best of the best and you're confident, but you're also kind of carrying that burden of always feeling like you have to be perfect,
Yeah. Well, and, it was difficult for me as a person with a disability because I advocated for handrails to the press box. It was kind of embarrassing for me to go to a game Friday night and have to have mom and dad get me there. I love them both, but as far as like just the support system that you had for journalism, gymnastics. I mean, have your parents always been behind you, or were they somewhat uncomfortable with the idea of you being a journalist in this time where you were going to, you know?
See, that's one thing about my parents, and just like any parents, they always give you a hard time growing up, and
Yeah.
so, especially my dad, my mom, they're always like on me, on me, on me. You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to make sure you're staying on track. But whenever it comes to my dreams and pursuing what I want, they are literally always right there behind me, number one fans. Like, I've never had to question whether or not I'm going to have their support, because literally any idea that I have, any dream that I have, anything that I want to do, they're always going to tell me to do it, because they know that anything I put my mind to, I can do. So it's been great having parents who are that supportive, because I think that, throughout sports, and then especially in the field of journalism, it's tough to do what we do sometimes without having that nudge from the people who love you.
Yeah. And I feel like, I'm a homebody and an only child at that. So it's been with the pandemic, I've been training for this my whole life. It's hard for me to leave my my home base, but I feel like your willingness to travel, that not only allowed you to grow as a person, but it makes you more attractive to other stations out there, because it's like, wow, she's from Indiana and she went to Texas. That's a traumatizing move for anybody, especially at your age.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, Jimmy, I had a really, really hard time adjusting when I first moved. And I think it just had to do with more so of moving away from home and family for the first time versus where I was moving. It was just really, really challenging. Amarillo, Texas is really, really small, totally different environment than what I had experienced, in Indiana and growing up. So it was kind of a culture shock, even though I did meet some really great people there. And I still have some really great people there who I still keep in contact with, but it's tough making that move after college. I mean, graduating college and entering the real world is hard enough, because you're in the real world. Like, the fun and games is over. And honestly, it's not over. I honestly like adulting more than I love like high school, college. Honestly, like, I like having my own money. I like being able to do what I want to do, not having to answer to anybody. But yeah, it's tough kind of trying to maneuver and feel like, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you didn't just waste your time, all of those years prior leading to the moment that you were in.
Well, and it's difficult too, because in this political climate, everybody's personal opinion is their truth. Like, we studied truth, basically. Journalism is the study of truth. And when you have things so polarized, I feel like that would almost motivate me to not be in the business. Have you ever felt that way?
Feeling like
it's too much. It's a mental challenge for me. Like, it's a stressful business to be in, because you're always susceptible to other people's opinions and the reaction of other people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Honestly though, I think that having dealt with that, and I moved to a city starting out, where I think the people were a lot different than the people I was exposed to growing up, where I really kind of just learned, hey, people are who they are. Everybody is different based off of their backgrounds, their upbringing. So I think it's easier for me to just be able to respect and accept people's opinions, regardless of if I agree with them or not personally, which of course I never disclosed being a journalist. But I think knowing that, it makes it easier to kind of just take it for what it is. You really kind of can't get your emotions involved, because everybody is different, and even on like the most heated topics, people feel how they feel because of what they've been exposed to. And that's just kind of where I leave it.
Yeah, you can't get mad at somebody's experience and how that affects them. Looking back, we've talked about some of your work at CHTV. I laughed to myself the other day that like 15-year-old Jimmy wouldn't believe where 27-year-old Jimmy is. If you could give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
This question before, and I feel like when I was asked this question before, I did not have a good answer. I still feel like, do I have a good answer? Um,
Yeah.
no, but honestly, how I answered this before is it's really kind of still how I feel now. I think to just enjoy the process and really be present in the moment and know that what is for you, and just stay true to yourself and stay the course, and everything will work out. I mean, you know how it is growing up. You always want to fit in, you always want to have fun, do what everybody else is doing, for most of us at least. But I think that if I could tell my younger self to just like be the one who stands out, who does things differently, who does what she wants to do that might not be what everybody else is doing,
Right.
it would have served me well back then, because that's kind of what I do now. And I did that sort of back then, but it's hard growing up. So I think that that is the advice that I give to my younger self.
Yeah. Looking back, man, if I knew then what I know now, oh my God, it would have been so much better. But you know, when you're thrown into the fire, which is kind of what you are when it's CHTV, especially like opening week of football, we might have the commentators be experienced, but everybody else, yeah, that's the crazy thing about TV, and why I'm so proud of you too. Like a lot of TV, you're only as good as your weakest staff member, right? Like,
Yeah, no, it's true.
yeah.
It's true. It really is. It's a team effort every single day.
Yeah.
And even being a multimedia journalist, I do work independently a lot on my stories, but there's so much more that goes into your stories outside of just shooting your video, writing your story, doing your interviews. I mean, like,
Yeah.
literally, for example, yesterday, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm talking to our assignment desk. I'm like, cool. Can a photographer meet me here and help me get some man on the street interviews? Okay, cool. Can you call this person and see if they can do this interview at this time? So you have so much collaboration that's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That's really kind of helping the product come together.
Well, and let's go back to your college experience, because you went to Ball State, and of course they have the David Letterman School, which is outstanding and awesome. I actually haven't been to see the facilities. What was that experience like? Everybody that went to Ball State, I heard that like you didn't get to be on air until you were a junior. How competitive was it?
A junior, really? I'm trying to think. So like on air as far as anchoring, or on air as far as just like
having a tape of some sort, right?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is very competitive. And I think what I struggled with at Ball State, I was an athlete. And like, I mean, being a collegiate athlete, all of your time and energy goes towards that. Like, we're talking 5 a.m. workouts, like going straight from workouts to practice to class, then leaving class, going straight to practice, then leaving practice early, going back to class, and then sometimes having to go back to finish up practice, or like making up extra workouts. So there's all of this stuff that I'm doing daily. Like literally my days are like 5 a.m. to like 9 p.m. Seriously.
Right.
So finding time to still do like those other extracurriculars and getting involved in what was it called? Why can I not? The name of the show is escaping me, and Ball State's probably going to hear this and be like, really? But our broadcast show, it was hard. It was hard to do that because like I didn't have the time or energy. So anyways, I did still do it. I think I was involved in our television broadcast program from like my sophomore year through senior year. Right. But a lot of the people in the program didn't know who I was because I wasn't fully immersed in it. I wasn't just in the newsroom like all the time. Like I was still getting my story assignments and reporting and turning content, and it wasn't super frequently. And I'm not saying I didn't take a semester off here or there, but it's sometimes harder to really feel like you're getting those opportunities just because you're not around as much as other people are. And those other people, of course, who are there all the time, who are dedicating all their time and energy, are going to get those opportunities. So that was really, really hard for me, because it's like, you know, you want to be doing as much as you can, but you're not always able to do that. I did get to anchor, I think, one semester when I was there, but yeah.
See, when I was at UIndy, you were on air within the first 6 weeks, and that was for the radio program, and they have time to fill. So that's the other argument there. But yeah, so much of that business is about like reps and just being comfortable. And you were talking about your gymnast experience. I knew a football player and a softball player that teaches you time management real quick. What you were talking about. So what did you learn from as far as like life from athletics?
Management, you just said
Yeah.
it. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
and I keep going back to my Olympic experience that I'm about to embark on, here in a few weeks, just because I really feel like I've been kind of working two full-time jobs because I'm still turning like my daily content for our newscasts here, but
Right.
I'm still also having to do content for our pre-Olympic coverage, and like I'm getting days to work on that, but it really is kind of like managing two full-time jobs. And it's like you have to be organized, you have to have time management skills, or you're going to forget about meeting dates, you're going to forget about, deadlines you have coming up. So I have like one big calendar, I've got my planner, I've got like all of my KXAN stuff written down, I've got the Olympic stuff written down, and I'm just making sure that I know when I need to do everything I need to do so that I'm staying on top of it. Because if you don't stay on top of it, and if you don't carve out that time, you're not going to get everything done. And I had to learn that several times the hard way in college.
Well, and if you haven't done so, Jayla, I would recommend getting Apple and watching The Morning Show. That's a tremendous TV program that kind of shows you the behind the scenes stuff of what goes on in a network. One issue that I dealt with in my experience so far is like you've talked about working as a team, and you do. There is a cohesive unit, but at the same time, was there ever jealousy or like anything of that sort between staff members? Because you're all trying to compete against one another too, I feel like.
Yeah, I think definitely starting out in your smaller starter markets, there's always that. And I don't know if I would call it jealousy. It's more of just that like really competitive edge that can come off a little bit strong sometimes, just because we are starting from the very bottom and trying to work our way up. But I would say now, what I'm about 4 years in, it's still very competitive. And even in my newsroom, my news director will be the first to tell you, like, he wants it to be a competitive newsroom because that's how we get better. And whenever everybody's staying hungry, that's when you really have people who are on their toes. But like, we're all still rooting for each other. At least that's the vibe that I get. So like, it's like, yeah, you might be going for that same promotion, or you might want a certain opportunity that somebody else wants. But at the end of the day, I think if everybody is working hard and that, whatever happens, because we've all put our best foot forth, that's just kind of what it is. So it's always going to be competitive, always, always, always. But I think that the longer you do it, you kind of learn how to manage it better, especially when you're in like a good working environment.
Yeah, that's critical. And I think, and you've done a great job of this, work-life balance is also important. How do you detach from work when you're not around it? What do you like to do?
Yeah. Well, the first things first, don't check work emails. And like, that's so hard in news because it's like, there's always something happening. And like, when you're in news and you love it, like you always, like, it's hard not to want to be in the know. But that's number one. I don't check work emails. I don't even watch our newscast when I'm off. Because you got to disconnect. So I like to spend time outdoors. I have a little puppy. She's not so little anymore, but I like to take her to the dog park, run around, we'll walk some trails. Me and my boyfriend love to brunch, love to spend time with our friends. And that's a great thing about Austin. You really have a lot of young professionals who are all kind of like grinding during the week, but then when they're off, we like to have fun. So it's good to surround yourself with people who are kind of in the same mindset as you.
Being in the TV business, is it hard for you to watch a show and not criticize it as it's playing? Like, I mean, what shows are you into that you like, and what shows are like, I can't believe this is on?
Like just like stuff on Netflix.
Yeah. What's on your list?
All the time. What was I watching? There are some like really, really bad movies sometimes that you can watch on like Netflix, or like just the cinematography, and like, because I do shoot my own video, like I love watching for like that creativity that people have throughout their shows. So sometimes you just kind of feel like it's a little bland and not doing it justice. But one show that I will say that I love watching, that has great cinematography. Like it's just all perfect. Insecure, I don't know if you've heard of that show.
Great show.
But with Issa Rae, oh my gosh, it's just like all around fantastic. Like, yeah. So that's a show that I definitely have watched and critiqued. And it's funny because you can even pick up on those tips sometimes and incorporate it in your own work as well.
Euphoria. I'm excited for that this weekend.
Does it come back this weekend?
Yeah, the second season, and the cinematography is different on that show. So
yes,
awesome.
And that's another thing because like the business is always changing, times are always changing. So it's kind of cool to see how people kind of evolve and put that creativity on things.
Well, and Jayla, I don't want to put down Ball State here, but we're all about trying to save money, and a lot of trade schools are now introducing like TV and radio as a trade. Looking back, would you have done your education differently, knowing that there's different paths to get to where you are?
I wouldn't have, and maybe that's because I'm such a by the book girl.
Yeah.
No, I wholeheartedly wouldn't have. Like Ball State prepared me so much. Good. And it's kind of like we talked about, really overwhelming sometimes graduating and stepping foot into the real world. And I feel like the professors at Ball State, who many of them were in the TV industry or radio industry, they really kind of prepared you for what was to come, and equipped you with the skills to connect with people throughout the industry, to get you internships and things like that. So I think that I would not have done things differently had I had the opportunity to.
Oh, okay. And one other thing that I think women deal with, especially, I mean, I've talked to other women journalists, the cost of being a journalist adds up because you're dealing with like hair, makeup, clothes. Is that how much of that is a issue? I feel like that would be on my mind all the time.
Yeah, that's a real expense. It really is. I mean, like, and especially like being a Black woman, like it's not just like, you can't just get it. Like I can't call up my hairstylist and be like, hey, can I come get my hair done? Or like even tomorrow, like it's like far in advance, because typically when we're getting our hair done, most of us, it's a long, expensive process. So yeah, that adds up, and you always want to make sure you're looking your best. So there's that pressure there because you are investing like a lot in your appearance. Yeah, I feel like we should all be paid to keep up with our appearance, regardless if you're a reporter or an anchor. And I know a lot of the times, anchors are getting, money for clothing or whatever. So yeah, that's a real struggle. It really is.
Do you ever get audience feedback in your email? I mean, are people able to reach you?
Yeah, I have been very fortunate to where so far, I'm going to jinx myself saying this, but so far, all of our viewers have been very, very nice to me, like personally. Like I can count on one hand the amount of like negative feedback that I've gotten from viewers. And I know that that's not the case for everybody. But no, a lot of people that I know and a lot of people that I'm friends with, like you do get that negative feedback. And it's tough when like you're just out here grinding, busting your butt, trying to get a product on air. And then people want to comment about your appearance, which is really none of their business in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. But looking forward, Jayla, is there a better time to be a journalist? I feel like, we've dealt with 3 historical events within the last 2 years. As crazy as this world is, I'm kind of glad that we're still able to do it. It's a privileged job, and I'm happy to be involved too.
It's definitely a privileged job, and it's pretty remarkable to kind of have this front seat to history, Yeah, you really have to kind of take a step back and think about that sometimes, just because you get so caught up in just the coverage and meeting the deadlines and trying to get everything done that you need to get done. But we really do have like front row access to everything that's unfolding right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely is something that I don't take for granted.
I mean, we talked about it just as far as the pressure of trying to meet expectations, but I know that you covered a shooting in El Paso. These things happen way too frequently in our country. I bet it's sometimes difficult to show up for work knowing the subject matter you're going to have to cover and the people you're going to have to talk to and the emotions you're going to have to feel. How does that How can you talk about your experience with dealing with that? I can't imagine.
Yeah, that was obviously the hardest thing I've ever had to endure thus far.
Yeah.
El Paso, I still consider El Paso seriously a second home. Like, I absolutely loved El Paso. It was really hard for me to leave there just because it did feel like home. But that was tough. And then knowing that it came from such a hateful place, it was really hard to kind of have to put the faces with the names, and you're getting the list of the victims, and then you're like realizing like, oh, I talked to this victim's relative, and it's never something that I feel like would be easy for anybody to cover, just because you
Right.
do feel those raw emotions of everyone who's there. And you're not just watching it on TV, you're down there on the ground talking to people and realizing the great loss of not only all of these families, but the community.
Well, and that being your hardest moment, do you have a proudest moment yet? Or are you still working toward that at this point?
Proudest moment. That's a good question. We'll say we're still working toward that.
Have you seen yourself on a billboard yet? I feel like that would excite me if I saw myself on a billboard or something.
No. The most that I've seen is myself in a couple promos. That's pretty much it. No billboards quite yet, but who knows?
Hey, working toward it.
Exactly.
We can go ahead and ask that question. Where do you see yourself in the future? What's next for Jala?
What's next for Jala?
Yeah.
I think what's next for Jala is, I don't see myself not ever doing this. I truly do love what I do. I love being able to tell stories. I love being able to be creative and kind of connect with people in ways that you wouldn't normally be able to connect with them. So I think that I see myself doing a version of this, maybe just on a different platform, whether that's network, whether that's on the anchor desk. I think that I just want to really continue to reach as many people as I can reach. And I want to just keep growing and moving up in my career.
Well, I think with technology and everything else, you'll have plenty of opportunities. Where can people follow you and get access to your stuff? Yeah.
Follow me on Twitter. It's Jala Wash _ TV. Okay. And you can follow me on my professional Facebook as well. It's just Jala Washington. And then if you want some little more lax content, you guys can follow me on Instagram at Jala Wash TV.
Awesome. Folks, to hear this again, check out my website, jbkonair.com. And you can get the show, JBK On Air, anywhere that you get your podcasts. Until next time, folks, have a great day and a better tomorrow.